So what is Gitbash and how to install it on Windows? Gitbash is a command line through which users can get Git features. It emulates a bash environment on Windows and lets the user use most of the standard Unix commands. It is for the users that are familiar with the bash terminal of Unix operating systems. There is also GitCMD, which is just like a regular Windows command prompt, where users can use all the Git features through the command line. Most users that are new to GitHub are unaware of Gitbash and how it works. To install Gitbash on our computers, it's very simple. We download Gitbash from their website, and this is the website over here, which is git-scm.com/downloads. And we can choose the version for our operating system. If we use Mac, we can choose Mac OS operating system, Linux or Unix for Linux operating systems, and Windows for Windows operating systems. So when you click this, it will definitely start to download. Otherwise, you can click here if it doesn't start. So we can click here. After it downloads, we go to our downloads directory and we look for Gitbash. In my case, here it is. I downloaded the 32-bit version, but you can also download the 64-bit version. Here, you can go under standalone installer and look for 64-bit and download it if that's what you want. In fact, this is the one we're gonna install because my operating system is a 64-bit version. So I'll again open the downloads folder, and here is Git 2.38.1 at the time of recording this video, and it's 64-bit. So just double click it. If your computer has enough resources, it will be faster to install. And the installation wizard will start. Click next. Then take note of everything you are doing here. So you can, they show you here that to continue, click next. If you'd like to select a different folder, click browse. This browse if we want to install it in a different folder apart from the default one, which is programs Git. So we click next, select the components you want to install, clear the components you don't want to install. Click next when you are ready to continue. So if you want additional icons, you can select additional icons. For example, I can say I want an icon on the desktop. Windows Explorer integration, yes, I want this. Then because I want to be able to open some directories with Gitbash, and some defaults which are here, like associate.git configuration files with a default text editor, associate.sh files to be run with Gitbash. Check daily for Windows updates. If you have internet connection, you can click this to check updates about new versions of Gitbash. Add a Gitbash profile to Windows Terminal. So this is new and I don't know if it will work, but what will happen is that it will allow us to run the Gitbash command quickly in the Windows Terminal. Then Scalar, Git add-on to manage large-scale repositories. So this one can even go off, but let's leave it on. Then we click next. After that, setup will create the program shortcuts in the following start menu folder. To continue, click next. If you want to select a different folder, click browse. So I'll leave it like this, and I'll also not check this one. Then I'll click next. Now here, which editor would you like Git to use? So they are talking about Vim, but we don't have Vim on this computer. Instead, what we have is Visual Studio Code. So here they have two options: use Visual Studio Code as Git's default editor, or use Visual Studio Code inside as. So this is the one I want, and then next. Then these options, you can let Git decide. Let Git use its default branch, currently master, but if you use GitHub, usually the default branches are main. So we shall select this one and override and make sure that main is set here. Then we can click next. Here they ask us what we want to do. I use Git from Gitbash only. Here, this is the most cautious choice, as your path will not be modified at all. You will only be able to use the Git command line tools from Gitbash. Git from command line and also from third-party software. So I'll leave this one selected and I'll continue. Use bundled OpenSSH. I'll go with this one. Again, I'll go with the default. Again, I'll go with the default and the default and the default. Git credentials manager and enable file system caching, which is okay. Then I want to enable experimental features. Then Git will start installing. So take caution, don't just click next, but try to read through the options to see which one works for you. If you are a beginner, feel free to go with the default options. Then in the future, as you use Gitbash, you can do whatever you want. So it has installed and we can view the release notes, which I'll check off. I won't unselect, but I'll select the launch Gitbash and finish. Yeah, the Gitbash terminal has opened. We can even check which version of Git it has installed, and it has installed the Git version 2.38.1.Windows.1. So if we wanted to really be sure whether we can run Linux commands or Unix commands on Windows, we can try out a command like ls, which lists the contents of the directory, and that's it. We can even do pwd, which prints out the current path, and you can see that we are at C users be happy. So if I say cd desktop, we can list the items on the desktop, and you can see that the items on the desktop are the Microsoft Edge link, the Visual Studio Code link, desktop.ini, which we don't see, then my php file.txt, which is great. So if we want, that means that Gitbash has installed properly. Congratulations. Another thing, after installing Gitbash the way we've installed it, we can simply go in the Windows command line and use the Git command. You can see that if I put it, they show me details about Git. If I put, I'll clear the window. If I put Git -v, they will show me the version. So the only thing we don't have is the Linux commands, but for those ones, we know what we can do is that we can open Gitbash, and to open it, we can click the start and we click one of these. There is Git GUI, this one here, which is not for command line. There is Git CMD, where we can go to run Git commands, and there is Gitbash, where which we can use, and I like this one, Gitbash, because for it we can use it to run Git commands and Linux commands or Unix commands.